I hope that so remember at the very beginning, the question is why don't we interview? And the very first things we had said in the beginning that we want to do, our purpose in staffing, this is not going to be graceful, I'll try to get back. Our very first reasons, the goal of staffing is to hire the best candidate. We have to remember that they are also interviewing us. Okay? We don't want to scare off the best candidate with a process or with intimidation or with rudeness. Okay? I'm not saying that the taping would be rude, but there are other situations that we could be creating. Okay? We want to have the best team, and we want to make a great long-term decision. Okay? The last thing in the list was compliance. It's something we never want to forget, but it's not our ultimate goal. It's a safeguard. It's a check and balance. It's something at the end you say, is all of this compliant? Yes, it is. Then I can carry forward. It's a check and balance. It's not our main purpose. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So if you were going to interview, I would want it to be done in such a way that it didn't really intimidate anybody or kind of make it more difficult or turn them off or make them more at ease. Okay? All right, good. So anyone else had feedback on that? Anyone that read notes? You can share feedback amongst the two of you. But really the question is could later someone recreate and make the same decision you did with what you've given them? There's two types of discrimination. One is disparate treatment, and that is treating people differently. So that's basically saying asking different questions or putting people through a different process or additional screening for certain types of people. That one, I think, is pretty blatant, and everyone knows not to do it. Like, we've all got that. That's basically like the 101 level. Okay? When we get to the 102 level, it's disparate impact. It's basically having the same process, but it impacts groups separately. One observation that's very easy to see, and an example I'll use, is if the police force says you have to be 5'8" or taller. That is a universal standard, right? It's 5'8". Does it impact one group more than another? Yes, it most certainly does. And unless there was literally a reason why 5'8" was the cutoff, you couldn't have that standard. You can't have a different standard. If you had said, well, they didn't like it because I was a guy and I was aggressive, but if I was a girl and I was aggressive, then that would have been okay. So, and here's the other deal. When these come down, what happens is, I don't want to get too much into the regulatory, because remember, that's the last bullet. But that's the whole point of taking notes. The only reason we take notes is for this reason. So let's at least take good ones. The person makes an allegation. They don't need any basis for that allegation. So they say, you didn't hire me because I am X, Y, Z. And trust me, I've seen some interesting ones. All white male interview team, all white male interview candidates, and they'll still come up with a reason why you didn't hire them that was because of race. I mean, you're like, what? Is that even possible? Like, sometimes you have to get out a chart and see if it's even technically possible. But they can make the allegation. It doesn't have to be logical or rational. Then we have to defend, and our defense is to say, your defense is to say, not that, no, we didn't use that. Your defense is to say, here's what we did use. And 9 times out of 10, we're making the decision based on what happened in the interview. So we need to be able to say what happened in the interview. Does that make sense? So you've got 6 people interviewing in the room. Only one person has to have good notes on each question.
But I want somebody who can take shorthand. I want to hire a paralegal.
I don't think it's absolutely necessary at all. I took notes all day last week for 2 days straight. Word for word what they pretty much said. And even sometimes people are like, they said this, and I could flip that through and say, no, they said this, 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 this. So again, not every single person needs thorough notes for every question. We just need to be able to recreate.
In the last 5 years, how many challenges have we had?
Yes, and we don't get a lot of challenges. The problem is you can't go back and recreate it after you do. I think we've had probably 2 or 3 since I've been here.
What has been the disposition of those applicants been challenged?
The 2 or 3 that I've seen haven't come to. They take a long time. I mean, they really take a long time. But I can tell you from my past before the district, my favorite ones are you just bundle up the interview notes and mail them. You don't have to write a rebuttal. You don't have to get into defending it. You don't have to pull any numbers. and say, well, our population is this, so clearly we're not discriminating. You just pack up the notes and you send them and you say, read the notes. I'm not taking any more time. I'm not going to pull that whole entire interview team in a room and make them write a deposition. I'm not going to even call them in to question their decision. It's here in the notes why they didn't hire the person. You staple the packet together and you put it in the mail and you're done. And that can be, now on that one I know we spent something like 42 man-hours responding to one request. And if we could have just taken a pile of notes and sent them off, that would have been 41 hours of our lives back. So it's just taking notes while you're in there. Okay? All right. Good. So, and we focused a little bit on note-taking today, too, because it's something we haven't focused on in the past. Does that make sense? The value isn't because it's the most important thing. It's because it's something we haven't focused on. And it gave us the opportunity for follow-up questions. So in each of the teams, we reviewed what follow-up questions were asked and which ones were not asked, which things were missed. So, the day of the interview, we still have the confidentiality agreement. We're going to greet the candidate warmly. No fish flop handshakes. Okay? Yes? There is. There is. Yeah. Yep. Yep, they sign it. It's right in there. If you go to the supervisors tab, it's under interview. Okay. Mm-hmm. All the interview stuff is together under the supervisor tab. Okay. Yeah. I'd be honest with you, we don't ask you to turn in the signed one. It's a good thing to have. I think it weighs on people the level of importance. We don't require you to turn it in, but you're not going to get dinged for the ones you didn't do last year. No biggie. But, you know, it does make people sometimes stop and think and reflect, like, oh, okay. All right? Don't engage in outside interests. So, let's go right this way. We're going to walk over to the interview here. What did you think of the game this weekend? Is that a good conversation starter or a bad conversation starter?
Depends if they're wearing a Bronco shirt.
Depends on whether they're wearing a Bronco shirt. Now we're going to talk dress code. So why might that not be the best way to start the conversation?
They're looking for the right answer. They want to know, should I say I like the game?
I know. Yeah. You've got their head spinning because they feel like, this is one of those people that likes to click. Now I got to click. And I'm trying to are they wearing Broncos colors? Maybe they don't even watch football. Crap, is it hockey season? What is their sport, right? So please be careful of things like that. It doesn't do anything but rile up about 80% of the candidates, okay? Because they're into the sports.
We have a sports day, though. And it's a Friday that we're interviewing. We're all in our Broncos gear or whatever. Then we say something like, we don't normally look like this, but,
You reflect on the environment. Give a mini tour. I think those are great kind of icebreaker conversation starters. Weather. Did you find us okay today? Is your car parked in a good spot? Right? I can't believe how warm it's been. Okay, all of those kinds of things. You'll notice as we go down this hallway, the building is new. It was built in 2009. You know, those types of things. So give a little warm up, but try to stay away from things that are personal. Okay, now what do? This is how it goes. Did you find us okay today? Well, yeah, but I was a little late because my kids were all over the place. You know how they are. What do? Can I talk about that? Please, throw extreme caution out so they know. No, I'm just teasing. Okay. Just blow it off, okay? You're not in trouble because they chose to tell you something. They can choose to tell you anything they want. The fact of the matter is you didn't ask, okay? So we're not going to ask, are you late because kids caused you to be late? Does this happen often, right? You would just say oh, well, that can happen, let's go this way. Just keep moving. Don't ask, well, how old are those kids, right? Don't. How many do you have? Do you plan on having more, right? What does that one do? Because I see one there, right? So stay away from those types of things, okay? Offer water, comfort items, tell them if they need a break to let you know. Make sure they might need to use a restroom before or after. Make sure cell phones are turned off, distractions are eliminated. In the interview, you'll explain the process and any logistics. That goes back to, we have about 35 minutes today, and you'll see that we have 10 questions there in front of you. I hope that we can make it through all of them in the time that we have. Okay. Again, HR people do this, right? This is the chicken riding in the car, like the head. It's very affirming to people. Okay? They will tell you more the more you can do this. Okay? It only feels stupid the first 5 minutes. Ask the candidate if they have any questions. Now, there's another new part. If you look at your guide tool template maker, on page 5, after you've done the phone screen, they've come in, you've done the warm-up, we have left you space for a resume review. How the heck are you going to ask the same questions of all the people when they have different resumes? The fact of the matter is you're not. Okay? We're starting with the guide. This is the same for every candidate. What it asks you to do is look at their resume. Okay? With a resume, I use it in a few ways. If everything looks good, I really don't have any questions, they look like a solid candidate, then I usually just use it as a little warm-up intro. You know, in a couple sentences, tell me about your latest career transition. Right? Or in a few words, or I don't know, like a few words, but very briefly, walk me through what you like most about the job you're in now. Okay? Get a little bit. That's if the resume looks completely clean. But here's the more new part. We really want you to scrutinize the resumes. Right? Because again, this is a reflection on people's past. Sometimes we do have to hire people, and the resume might not be squeaky clean. What we want to focus on is the dates, the reasons for leaving, any gaps, and probe into those. See if they make sense. See if they don't make sense. Okay? This is kind of where you're a little bit of a detective. This is kind of like the reference portion. Okay? But if you have a question, ask it. Yes. Yep, that's exactly how. We've still done it where we still have the questions on the table. We say just to get, we do the intro. We have about 35 minutes today. You'll notice we have 7 questions. We provided the questions for you. If you need anything throughout that, just let us know. We will go around and take turns asking the questions. Just to get started, though, can you tell me a little bit about this position and what you learned from it? So you kind of worked it into the intro portion. And people usually are very comfortable talking about themselves in their resume, so I don't think that's too rocket science. Okay. I did write down when I did it last week the question I asked, because every candidate did differ according to their resume. Yes. Can you ask about multiple jobs? Yes, you can. That's a question based on the resume. Please help me understand how you've had, what has taken you to each of these places. Depending on the position you're for. If you're interviewing for a teacher, that's one thing. Usually those resumes tend to be a little cleaner. If you're interviewing, though, for some of your classified positions, those resumes may not be as pristine as we always hope. That's okay. Ask them. They might have good reasons. Okay? And maybe not. Or maybe you at least get a pirate story out of it. All right? It's perfectly okay. All right, good. So we want to probe into those, though. If we have questions, we need to make sure that they're asked. All right. So you're going to do the resume review. And then you're going to do the skills and ability questions that you designed with any follow-ups. Ask if they have any questions and do the closing. Most of this format's exactly the same as what you've been doing. Introduction and the resume review and the follow-up questions. Follow-up question. We covered it. You may need to ask to get to the R. I talked about that's what they'll most typically miss. Okay. You can ask questions based on the candidate's unique experiences and note the additional questions you ask in the responses. Okay. Red flags. How they treat yes, question.
Okay,
Sure.
The resume, I know that there's a Taleo-specific resume that kind of parses out the data that they've entered.
Yep.
But then they also have an attached resume. First of all, would you lean towards one or the other? Because I think, kind of what Jim said, where sometimes you can see it, you see the quality of the work in the resume that you wouldn't see in the Taleo side. And then second, is there any way to bulk print their submitted resumes? I know I can bulk print the Taleo resume, but can I bulk print theirs?
I don't believe that you can bulk print the printed resumes. You have to open them as attachments. But hopefully you're getting that down to a small number of candidates for that. So you would have to open those individually. We, again, in Taleo, recommend using them through the system and dispositioning your candidates and viewing. I think it's easiest to view the candidate, the job submission tab, when I'm looking in Taleo. But prior to the interview is the one time I would go in and print. And then I would print the attached resumes. I think those are the easiest to read. Another little fine trick, if you have to print, I'll at least try to save you some time. Although, again, I recommend not printing as often as possible. But the easiest thing to do is to email them to yourself. I don't know why. If you click the candidates and you hit the email button, you can email them to yourself and it formats them a little easier to read. If you're going to print the big profile things. I don't know why, it just makes it look a little prettier. So, a little trick. Okay? Yeah. I'll tell you what I know. You decide how you use it. All right. So red flags, how they treat the various people they interact with. If you haven't heard about it, there's classic stories about there. They take turns interviewing candidates and they put the alternate candidate in like a waiting area and they interact with some other either fake candidates or administrative, or in this case it was for a company, the urban legend goes, and it was the bartender, and the bartender was the CEO. Measuring how people react to other people, because they were telling the bartender like, oh, that panel, you wouldn't believe this one chick. Things they would tell the bartender about the experiences that they had just had throughout the process and in the room, and the bartender was the CEO. So we can't do that here because we're not interviewing in bars, please, right? Yes? Okay, good. But you can gauge how they interact. Please? Yes? No? Yeah. Exactly. You're going to have to knock that off. Can't believe she caught us. But you can still observe how they interact with your administrative staff in the front. And that is important. If they capture it for one candidate, have them capture it for each candidate and put it in part of the notes.
Katie, where does social media play into this?
Yeah, social media is a whole nother fun one. Please, don't Google them until after the interviews. Okay? And we even had an interesting experience the other day. When you Google people, you just never know what you're going to find. And you have to watch changes in names and everything else. In HR, occasionally we hear, teacher did this or teacher did that. Or fortunately, the latest haven't been in our school district. But of course, we all wanted to pull up and Google that Twitter page, right? See, did she really say that? Right? So just be careful. Please don't do that until after the interview. And be very, very cautious. Because again, it could be multiple people with the same name. It could be something different. I would ask if you have a problem there that you contact HR and we walk you through it.
What if they put that on their resume? You get
Some will. How about the email address hotbabe@aol.com? Right? It's a data point. I can't tell you to overlook it because who does? Right? But it's a data point. Why would you put that on a resume? People do it all the time. Little Miss Kitty seriously? What are you thinking? Right? Your professional email address should not be kissy face anything. Okay? I've seen them all. That's also kind of another piece of social media. If you depends on the position you're interviewing for, right? What you need that person, what kind of thing, or you could ask. I noticed that the email address you gave us is kissyface@123.com. Is that where we can reach you best? And if they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I really need to get around and changing that, it might give you, if they're like, that's it. Oh, okay. Again, if you do it like this.
Well, the stuff you see on Facebook, Steve, I can't believe you put up.
It's a data point. It is a data point, and what they're choosing to make public or private, the parents are going to find and you're going to find. That's why I can't tell you to absolutely ignore it. It could be, though, that we contacted the candidate as HR and said, I understand that they're pursuing you for this position, but we wanted to have a conversation about this in particular. We can always remove you from the line of fire as well, and sometimes that's just a better place to be. Okay? Nothing wrong sometimes with standing behind us and let us kind of wade the dangerous waters. Other red flags, beware of concrete details. Oh yeah, I did it all the time. That happens all the time. Here's how I handled it. Can you give me one specific? Oh, you know, just all the time. Okay, let me give you a minute. I'm going to catch up on notes from the last question. I'd like you to think of one specific time. Do you have one? That was a few minutes. Pause for the, well, you know, it just happens all the time. Okay, all right. Well, we'll move on. Okay. Does it really happen all the time because you can't think of one? Okay. Demonstrate lack of responsibility or continually assign blame. Well, it would have worked if so-and-so had done this. Like, that might be true once. If that's true on 5 out of 5 questions, we've got to talk. Okay. Gaps of employment, reasons for leaving that don't make sense. The candidate not having questions or questions based only around pay. Inappropriate language, being late, dressed unprofessionally. Now, if it's snowing and they're late, that's not great, but you could decide to schedule a second interview and see if they make it on time to that one. Yes? Ching! Well, as you can see, there's a lot of us here on the panel, and we're interviewing a lot of people today. So that's something we'll have to get back to you on. Do you have any feedback for me? Is there anything I could have done differently or anything else you still have remaining to ask? You know, that's information that we'd love to share with you at a later point in time. Be a little careful. Some of them have read 28 Ways to a Successful Interview, and that is one of the steps. So you got to be careful about whether you feel that, like, don't let that taint the whole interview. They might have just been trying to be prepared. And unfortunately, there are websites out there that recommend when you first greet them, ask them what they're looking for and how you could. And so be careful of things that are catchphrasy or buzzwordy, or, you know, somebody's gotten their hands on them and told them that this is a great way to make a good impression and great way to close the interview. Asking them if there's anything else they could do for you. Oh, right, can't stand all that. I also don't like resumes that don't have dates on it, so don't ever send me one of those. Just my own pet peeve as an HR person, I need dates. Which usually includes at least the month, if not the day.
I don't like resumes that list this skills.
Oh, skills. That's exactly what I don't like. Right. It's like, here's all the things I've ever done, and here's the jobs I had, but you can't tell where the rubber meets the road. So in that situation, what do you do in that situation? Because I hate that resume, but it is one of those new, like, trendy advice things. I've called people and asked them to redo their resume. I would really like to give the opportunity for this position. Unfortunately, your resume is confusing and hard for me to follow. If you could put it in a traditional resume format, I would gladly reconsider you.
Could we put that in the job for applicants? You know,
they get to upload what they want.
I'll tell you right now, the minute I see that, I'm like, next candidate.
I skip them. Sometimes I skip them. Sometimes I go back. Depends on what I got.
One of the things that happened to us, I'm not a very good proofreader, and so, you know, great candidate, great resume, read through it all, top, great interview, great interview, and one of our candidates, or one of our people on the interview team, read the cover letter.
Tore apart.
Multiple typos.
So here's the thing. This is a catch-22. There's no other way to describe it, and I'm not going to change your opinion. Because if you have a strong opinion that every typo or spelling error is a ding and we should totally not hire this person, then I'm not going to change your opinion on that. Sometimes, though, it's a sign that they were not looking, they did not have a cover letter and resume available, they saw the position and it had a special interest, and it came down in 2 days. And you now hate them because they spelled a word wrong. That may be your best candidate. So you've got to measure. Is it 100 typos or is it 1 or 2 little ones? Right? But sometimes the person we want is exactly that passive job seeker. They're not looking, i.e., they're not in trouble with their current district or generally dissatisfied. Or being an Emmett, bitching and moaning, right? They're just a great person, and someone said, oh my gosh, they've got the perfect position for you over there. Oh my gosh, that's my dream job. I never thought I'd find it. So you've got to be a little bit careful about that.
With language arts.
Well, that's different. Well, that's blew the whole thing right out of the water.
Math or science teacher you like, but language arts?
And put it in the context. Are you hiring for math or science or custodial, or are you hiring for language arts?
So
That makes
when
sense.
I let her know that she was not moving forward, would it have been appropriate for me to offer some feedback on the letter?
If you are comfortable providing feedback, I am comfortable with you giving it. If you are comfortable saying we cannot provide you feedback at this time, I'm comfortable with that. If you're really giving them one small tidbit to say, we struggled when we read your cover letter. There were some inaccurate or some typos in there.
We did tell her that.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it seem like it was the one thing. Well, if I fix it, can I get it back to you? No, at this point. So you could say, if I did have one piece of advice for you, it might be that. Okay? Keep it general. Keep it very professional. Try to stay out of it. You do not ever have to give a candidate a reason ever. Do you know that? We do not owe them a reason by law. And sometimes they'll tell you, you have to give me a reason. No, actually we don't. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Document it factually. Yeah, don't put it at the top as reference to how you viewed the candidate. Yeah, don't try to take pictures with your little iPhone, right? But you could say, and I did this once, the candidate kept, every time she would lean forward, oh, that's 4. So in trouble now, I hit the mic again. Every time the candidate leaned forward, we got a little sneak peek. So I just did it every time. Lean forward again, lean forward again, lean forward again. So they were like, oh, okay, clearly it was too low. You shouldn't have seen it that often, right? So, yeah, you can do that. And if it's factual, and if it's tangible, don't write down, skirt is really short. Write down, candidate continually is adjusting her skirt in the chair, right? So that you can even say, it's not short in your opinion. She was having difficulty staying in it. That's different, right? It's not a matter of opinion anymore, all right? Just try to be careful, but there's usually somebody there that can kind of point you to some guidance. Okay, how to combat red flags. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions or ask the candidate to be more specific. Ask people, what could you have done differently? Sometimes they'll give an answer with a situation that maybe had some opportunity. And again, you said describe a time, and they're typically telling you the first one that came to mind, and you'll say, what might you have done differently? Well, I would have done this and this and this and this and this. Have you faced anything similar? Yeah, the next 2 years I was on those same committees. We decided to keep it that way. And I was able to use those things that I learned from the year before, and it was never a big deal again. Oh, well then that's even better. Something that you learned and applied is even better than something you never faced a challenge with in the first place. Question all gaps of employment or suspicious circumstances on the resume. I noticed you have this gap of employment. Can you tell me what you were doing in that time frame? Yeah, I was helping out a friend at the laundry business that they had. Oh, okay. You didn't list that, though, as one of your employers. Well, it didn't really contribute to the experience. What were some of your other responsibilities there? Well, we really just did the laundry. All had to be pressed and folded and things like that. Okay. Where was the address for that? Florence, Colorado. Oh, okay. What was the name of the business? Colorado State Penitentiary. Did you see where we were going before we got there? Okay. Probe the gaps of employment. That was a lot of follow-up questions, wasn't it? And I was doing pretty good up until the tail end. I said it was a friend's business. Well, that's true because my friend was my cellmate. They worked there with me. Okay. All right.
Would that count in a background check or something, too?
It might, but that's later. Okay? And only if it was certain ones. You might want to know it even if it was more broad. I don't know who goes to the one in Florence versus who goes to a state local.
Really bad.
Okay, those are the really bad. I didn't know that.
That would be really bad.
Work with me. I can judge by the height of the fences. Good. So question all gaps of employment. Use silence. Yeah, not like this. Just like, okay. It makes people uncomfortable and they will keep talking. You can tell if you think that they're spinning you a story and that they're trying to describe a time that never really happened and they're trying to make it up, just keep doing this and act with your pen like you're ready to write down the next thing they say. Okay. And they will keep talking. And then usually in the talking, you'll finally either conflict themselves or, and I've gotten to the point where I was like, okay, all right. No, that doesn't match what you had said earlier. Well, I mean, I was just giving you an example. You know, that last one didn't really happen, but that's what I would do. Oh, okay. Thank you for that. You just lied, right? So think about that. Use silence. Don't judge. Never judge in an interview, okay? That's not our time to judge, okay? We are here to gather information. And the information is helping you to make the right decision for them and for you. Okay? Control the interview. Always be polite. You may need to set some time limits. You may need to redirect. Just do it with a smile. And always drive back to their benefit. I'm going to skip on to the next question now. I hate to cut you off, but it's important we get to the last 3 questions so that we can evaluate you fairly. Oh, okay. They get like all excited, like, oh, thanks. I got what I need on that question. Let's move on so we have enough time. All right? If you mean it and you are truly trying to help them, not just finish up early so you can get a drink before the next one, right? Then they will see that. Conclude the interview, give them an opportunity to ask questions, thank them for their time, relate them to the next steps of the process. Don't overcommit. If you say we'll call you in the next 2 or 3 days, I guarantee you they're waiting for the phone call. And at the end of the 3rd day, they have made all kinds of assumptions. Okay? And show them out. Legal schmiegel. Who discriminates in here? Raise your hand. State of Colorado does? That is discrimination. So who in here discriminates? So we got to the heart, his little joke got to the heart of it. If you did not raise your hand, now you're a liar. No, we all discriminate. What does it mean to discriminate? It means to choose between 2 things. If you have 2 options and you pick one, you have discriminated. It has such a nasty connotation though, doesn't it? It's like a horrible word. It's become like the big D word. Okay? It is okay to discriminate. What we do not do is discriminate on the basis of age, race, color, religion, gender, national origin, veteran status, disability, or sexual orientation. That's when it becomes a legal problem. Okay? So we stay away from those. I actually don't have a lot of concerns. We can talk about some of these if you guys want to. But from the things I've seen, I feel very comfortable with this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think for the most part we get it and we do a great job.
I wanted to ask about pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I had a candidate that after the interview told me that she had just found out she was pregnant.
Mm-hmm. There is no after the interview. Until we hire you, you are in an interview process. So you still have that information. We cannot ask. However, sometimes people will tell you. However, if it's pregnancy, we are not to hold it against them.
So the situation is that we would be out without that person for a lengthy period of time, the first year of employment.
Yep. And the law states that we have already been without a person in that position and that we have methods to accommodate that because we are an employer of scale and size. Okay. Watch other things. These are a little bit more difficult. Not the obvious discrimination, but some of the biases. Similar to me, we clicked. That's 5. Getting worse as we go on the microphone. Halo and horn, to quickly earn judgment. So if someone comes in and they blow the first question out of the water, we tend to think everything else they say after that is golden. Or if they bomb the first question, then we tend to think everything they say after that is poor. Or they remind us of someone. So this is being able to earn a halo or a horn quickly. Okay? Be careful of that clouding your judgment as you go. And prior candidate reflection. Another trend is that, let's say that the last person left and they were great. We're just looking for a clone of them. right? And we're just comparing everyone to them. We may miss some really great candidates by not thinking about what else would I have liked to have seen from that person. I mean, they were great, but they already knew it. The new person's going to have to be a quick learner with no training. If you focus too much on the person that left, you could miss some things that you either didn't realize they had, or you didn't realize you needed, or you weren't thinking about what that job is going to do in the future. So be careful of that. Be careful of thinking too much of the prior candidate. Okay? Be careful of getting people that click, or that comfort in what you know being better than the comfort of what you don't know. Compromising, that's that short term. Okay? So we have another practice. We only have about 5 minutes. It was for a mock interview. So if you can stay and do that, I do think it would be valuable. What I've got is resumes for Anna, Ben, Charles, and Dana. And you would use the questions that you were looking at earlier. We can pull up some sample questions, or you can use the questions that I had used. I can put them up. Or actually, you've got them on the top of your notes from your STAR practice. So if you'd like, I'll pass out the resumes and we can do that. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So what we need is half of them have to, yes? Okay. Okay.
My thought is that you do this with that interview team and you develop these questions with that group of people.
Do you develop the interview questions with a group of people? It might be too much power. What if they want to find out all these? It really depends on how much latitude you can give them for the time that you have on what you need to get accomplished. So it's really going to depend. If you are truly able and open to say, what do you all want in your next second grade teacher that we're hiring, then I think that's fine. However, if you need them to know what you need to have, then your questions may exemplify that for them. If they want someone who is nice and cooperative and easy to work with and all of these things, that's great. But what if you need a curriculum leader? And they didn't come up with that. So that's a catch-22. I mean, it's really going to depend on who it is. If you can pull them in and work with them collaboratively enough, but yet get where you need to be, I think there's going to be a broad range of what's acceptable there. So it's going to depend on what you have. Okay? Other questions?
I think a lot of us are on the same boat that we have to take off.
Okay, sure, that's fine. It's almost 11.
Making the offer, can you talk
Oh, yeah.
about that piece?
Let's skip the practice real quick and talk about making the offer. Evaluate the responses. That just goes back up. You identified in the beginning what you were looking for. We talked in one of our groups with Charles and Dana, making sure that they answered. It was a question on communication and influence. No one probed on influence, and one of the candidates left out how he influenced. So you've always got to look at what were the 2 skills we were getting at. Did they give us a great story, but it didn't answer the question we had? They just sold you. They just sold you ice, and you're in Alaska. Right? So make sure you're not just buying ice. Make sure you're knowing what you need. You needed fuel, right? So make sure they're selling you what you asked for. I still love the plus delta. I think that's a great exercise. Reference checks, probe deeply, same thing with the red flags. Be thorough, okay? Ask those hard questions. That's how you do someone justice, okay? Not by having speculation that you don't get to the answer of. Go ahead. Yes. Yes, you can ask follow-ups. Yes. Yes. Yep. You can ask specific things to the resume or the follow-up questions.
If I missed this, but once we offer the position and type of thing, where do we go with pay?
Okay, we'll get there. I've got 2 more slides so we get to the offer portion.
Question on that last bullet there, not for the candidates for hire, but maybe the director.
Yes.
Sometimes
But if the reference check says, please do not hire this person at all, ever. Please don't send it to HR. We can't make a file and put that person through.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
If the reference check is, would you rehire this person? No, never. And the whole reference is poor, I can't do anything with that. I can't process that.
Well, I've honestly had principals that it reflected on them.
Then you've got to note that. Principal told me this, however, I don't believe him because you've got to give us the reasons why you would overlook that. So, right, we've got to have that built in. That can't be something if someone said, well, do you hire everybody with good references? Yeah, except for 3. Well, why'd you hire those 3? I don't remember, right?
Right.
Yeah, or you're gone and it's someone else in your role and we don't have that information. So that happens all the time. People switch schools or take a different role. We go back to the person who's in the role now. They're digging through the desk drawer and they can't answer any of the questions. So it's got to be preserved. Does that make sense? Great. Good. Move to hire. So once you have your selection decision and you're moving them through in Taleo, you'll disposition all your candidates and you'll move your hire to the hire status. You can communicate to those that you didn't interview. Then I wait until I can make the offer for the person selected before I communicate to those interviewed and not hired, if possible. Because that way if someone turns you down, if you have other viable candidates, you may go back to one of them. So sometimes I wait to tell them. Okay? We'll do that at the very end for the sake of time. And making the offer. So how to make the offer. Greet them warmly, thank them for the experience. It's been great to get to know you better. We would like to extend you the offer, and here is the salary. Okay, you will have that. You get an email that says your offer is ready. You go in, you can see the salary, you make them the offer, and you can send them the offer letter. What do you do if they want to?
Wait, time
Sure.
out before
Okay.
All right, so I've done all my reference checks.
Mm-hmm.
I submit to you,
Yes, in Taleo.
Joey, but I don't talk to Joe
Correct.
until I get that offer back.
Correct.
Meanwhile, Joe takes a job because I'm waiting for that offer.
If Joe takes a job in the 24 to 48 hours that we're working to turn the offers around, there's probably nothing more we could have done. So our commitment in the Taleo training has
Why
been,
can't I call Joe and say, I want to extend an offer to you, but I'm waiting for more information from you and your resources. Put them on hold somehow. That's the.
well, I mean, you could say to him, we're proceeding. I should be able to give you a final answer in a couple of days. You can be vague. I mean, but we'd more rather you call us and say, I got this guy who's moving along. I mean, 24 to 48 hours, if they're leaving, you do your reference checks and they're gone that quickly, that would be odd. But okay, if it's not odd and it happens all the time in 24 to 48 hours after the reference check, then maybe we can speed up the reference checks. But if not, let us know in HR if you need an offer.
Let's just say math teacher.
Yep.
Right? And I know every other school in the district's hiring math teachers.
Mm-hmm.
and I find somebody I want, I gotta be drawn to the punch.
That's fine. You can take the intent to make you an offer. However, at this time, it'll take me a day or two before I can get confirmation and a salary.
I mean,
Right. You and Ron are going to make them the same offer, so.
We compete against other schools in the district.
Well,
and we also
but
compete against-
going back to the Taleo training, the first one to send us the offer, we pull up the other places that they're interviewing, and we check the status of those. We make each candidate one best and final offer. That's from the Taleo training. We don't do that anymore
You're talking about in-house.
in district.
Yes, we're talking about the competition you have from outside.
Well, he specifically said in district,
Well,
but
no,
that one we
I
did
guess-
eliminate.
Well, I did say that, but I was going to
Yeah.
finish and say we're also competing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had candidates that had 3 interviews in a day
Yep.
and one from another district. But help me with the Taleo training again
So-
and the best offer from, I mean, which,
If you don't want a candidate stolen out from underneath you, what you need to do is continue to track your candidates. Because if we can see that they're in process with more than one place, we resolve all of that before we extend an offer. So, for example, if we got an offer, I want to make an offer to this candidate, and we can see that they've interviewed at your school. We call you. Where are you in the process? Do you know that they're interviewing at other places? And we kind of work through just a real quick to say, as a district, we need to make this candidate one offer. If it's second grade, have they indicated any location preference? What school makes more sense?
how do you get that information from them?
If we don't already have it, we can call the candidate and ask. Understandable at this point, we're looking at making you an offer. Did you have a preference of schools? Was there one thing that swayed you more than the other? If both schools are like, I want them, no, I want them, then we call and find that out from the candidate so that we make them one. So it's not you think you've got your role filled and 2 weeks later they disappear and go to someone else.
So maybe it's part of what you say to the candidate as they're leaving from your school. Maybe the conversation, I mean, it used to be, hey, we're going to get back to you this afternoon and let you know what decision we're going to make. Maybe that has to be something along the lines of, it's going to take us a couple of days to finalize this. Hang on, is there anything
Right.
that's going to keep you from
That's
hanging
great.
on for a couple of days?
Do you have any
Buy
constraints?
that little bit of time.
Yeah, but you still got to check the references. So normally I don't think you should have been getting back to them the same day, right? You'd have to wait and get the references in.
Well, you have to wait to check the references. If I have 3 finalists, could I check the references before I even interview anyone?
I'm okay with that. Or, yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Well, a lot of times what I say too is, you're probably interviewing at the place.
Let me know if you,
Let
right.
me know if something else becomes really solid.
Absolutely.
So that I can
They may get offers, but they don't have to accept them on the spot. They have time to consider them. So let me know if anything else comes to fruition before you respond to them so that we can make our best.
But if the principal called you and said, hey, we interviewed this person today, they're a math science teacher, we're going to lose them to another district, is there any way you can put this offer at the front of the line to get some confirmation by this afternoon? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Does that help? Yes.
Is Barry still going to be the only one doing this?
We have backups and support in place.
Because I envision middle of April, Barry, go here.
It's also much quicker with Taleo for her to do the offers. So it's quicker for her with Taleo to prepare the offers. Because all the information's in one place. We don't have to rely on the schools to send us 10 things correctly. Does that make sense?
Buy a little time too, saying, I know this is a heavy hiring time, and it's going to take us a couple of days to
Right.
finalize this, but we're very interested in
Right. Usually I think getting the references to call you back is more of a holdup. That's my goal. My goal this year is that the references are a bigger holdup to you than I am.
Do you just have to have, you have 2 from outside? Or
No. So one supervisor.
Okay.
If it's supervisory and recent, immediate, it's 1. You need 3 if it's not. Current supervisor, yeah.
About in-district?
Same.
Okay.
Yes.
If they're already in your school and they're moving to a different position, you don't need
You are the reference. But you may need to tell us that because we might not realize that. Do you understand the... Take the reference check form, upload it, and put your name on it or something just so we understand why. Because just not telling us doesn't give us anything to go by. Okay? People do that. And then you feel stupid. You call them and ask for the reference. I am the reference. Oh, I didn't know. So, okay, good. So if they want to negotiate, the fact of the matter is that we do our best to make everybody the appropriate offer. Although there are variable starting rates, the fact of the matter is it relates to their education, their years of experience, and the position for which they're applying. We would ask you to explain that to the candidates. That really we have to preserve internal equity, okay? That we have considered the best offer we can make you given your education, your experience. And this is what I show, right? And I show that you have your bachelor's, not your master's. And, we are offering you the position for whatever teacher. If they say, yes, that's correct, but I heard I could negotiate with Douglas County. Well, you can negotiate if you're bringing something to the table different than the other candidates that we've compared you to. But at this point, I see this is in line with our salary. Okay, and the salary we can offer you. If they are exceptional and they bring something that we have not captured, then we need your endorsement. The candidate calling the comp team and telling us they'd like to make more doesn't give us the reason for making an exception. You guys would have to be the ones to do that. So you would have to tell the candidate, I want to think about this further. I understand your resistance to accept at this rate. However, if you could give me some time to think about it, I want to go back to our HR department and see if there's anything else that makes sense. Okay? And then you need to call us and let us know. We can't just decide who to go out on a limb for and who not to go out on a limb for. We didn't interview them. We're not reviewing their resume compared to the other 300 people. You know the exception in your school and how difficult it was to attract or fill this position. Okay?
One other thing on that is we're moving the market-based flip side of that is market-based pay is not saying that we are going to pay whatever it takes to get somebody. That's a different theory of philosophy. So here's a recent example. Andy Abner called me up last week and he said, I want to look at this coach from Phoenix, but I think he's making more than our range because he's a TV teacher. So we had conversations back and forth and he said, should we actually interview this person or not? So he did a phone screen first, and we figured out ways that we think we can be in the ballpark. But there might be times when you're saying, I got a PE teacher from California making $90,000 a year, should I even interview? And the answer might be no. Because again, it's not that we're going to pay whatever it takes to get the best candidate, we're going to pay market for this guy, which is averages. So work with us to see if we're wrong on our ranges, but also look at their salary because they're going to enter that now into layout. So you'll see how much they're making in their last job if they put it in there or should. And you can decide, hey, I can find better for 40, why should I interview this one for 90? It's going to be your call. Don't put us in a position of saying, this is a great candidate, and they're making 90, how can we get it? Makes sense.
And you can't pin it. Some people are moving from California at 90 and they want 92. And other people are like, I understand there's a cost of living difference. San Diego or San Francisco to Colorado, I would actually be willing to accept something in this range. So it really just depends on the person. So, okay? But we can help you through that. Sometimes it's hard for you to call. Why? I can call and ask. I've done it before. You know, this is a range we're looking to pay in. Is this the position you're still interested in? Okay. I even nod when I'm on the phone. So they're like, she was so nice. She asked me if I'd take half my salary. Yep. Okay. Good. Great second choices. The other thing we have the ability to do in Taleo and we want to begin to utilize is that if you have a great second choice for a position, we have a way in Taleo to help gather that pool of people and point them to other openings so that we get those great seconds. So a lot of times you're like, gosh, I could hire either one of these. I wish I had 2 positions open this year. Let us know. We can help to retain that person in district by helping them to find other openings. We can note it on their Taleo profile, and then we put them in a pool and make sure they get pushed to other similar openings. Okay. Yes. Yep, Courtney or I. Okay. We want to keep them from going to another district. If we can get them in district somewhere, that's a start. You never know what will come back around and benefit you. I turned Brian down for a job 14 years ago. So how about that? 14 years later. So I know, right? You would think. You wore me down. Yeah, so you never know. But if we can keep that person touched and keep them warm and get them in district, it may come back around to benefit you. They could end up at your school in a couple of years or as an AP even, or who knows. Okay? Great. The end. Thanks for being patient. It looks like we're about 10 minutes over. But thanks.